Hi guys, my name is Jeff Hopkins, and today we are returning to Reason to talk about Thor, the polysonic synthesizer, and how we can use it for our woodwind controllers. I've already set up a very basic patch, which I'll show you a demonstration, and you can see how it works and how we can create our very own. Alright, so that's a very nice basic analog sound, and let me show you how this actually goes in Thor. So our signal flows, we have 3 oscillators that feed into a central mixer, which go out to different filters depending on which oscillator you want. These then go into our amplifier, which has an LFO, modulation envelope, envelope, filter envelope, which then feed into our effects over here, which we have delay, chorus, a third filter, and some other envelopes and another LFO. The very bottom, though, is where all the magic happens, which is the modulation matrix. All right, and you can see here we're taking inputs here and putting it to amplifier gain and filter frequency, and that's where we get our change in waveform from the filtering. So let me walk you through how you can create your own here in a brand new combinator. This combinator is empty, so I'm going to go ahead and add a couple things. The first thing we're going to add is the EXP1 expression processor. And if you haven't seen my other videos, it's very useful for smoothing out breath inputs. The next thing we're going to add is a Thor polysonic synthesizer. And the last thing we're going to add is a reverb unit. Now, if we turn it around, you can see it's already wired pretty well with the output of Thor going into a reverb, which goes out to our outputs. So what we're actually going to do now, though, is change our EXP1 to take breath from our woodwind controller. And we're going to go ahead and filter it by just adding a little tiny bit of attack and decay, and that will filter out our breath and make it much more smooth. I'm going to turn the gain up quite a bit too on this one. Now we're feeding in to Thor here, which I'm going to go ahead and reset to defaults here. And it's set up for just a single sawtooth waveform going in through a filter and some other envelopes. So by default, let me bypass the reverb here. By default, it sounds like this. Alright, very sawtoothy. So how can we make that better? Well, let's go ahead. We're not going to use our envelopes because we're doing all of our modifications via breath pretty much. So we have breath output from the EXP1, but we need to get it into Thor. So if we turn it around by hitting tab, we can take our CV out and put it into our modulation input of Thor into modulation input 1. Now if we go down to our modulation matrix and select CV1 and make it 100% output to our amplifier gain, it will now have breath control. Now it's still acting kind of funny because we're actually using the amp envelope here. So to make it actually work right, we're going to turn our attack all the way down, our decay all the way down, our sustain all the way up, and our release all the way down. Now breath directly controls all the amplifier. Now we get this. All right. Still sounds pretty awful, but that's because we're not adding the filter in yet. So we'll add that in now. Again, we'll take our CV input 1, which is our breath. I'm going to go 100% into filter 1 frequency. So that's going to change this guy right here. All right. And turn that down. All right, we're still getting this little clicky sound in between because we're actually on polyphonic. So what we want to do is change our mode to mono legato, which is a single note. And we're going to change portamento to auto and change our portamento time down to like 11. That sounds good. That's already sounding better, but my pitch bend is still pretty drastic. And that's controlled by the range up here. I'm going to go ahead and change that down to 2, which is 1 whole step. Now my pitch bend for my vibrato sounds like this. That sounds a lot better. So from there, it just sounds so good already. So all we really need to do now is turn on our reverb and change it a little more dry, and we'll make it a little less decay. All right, that sounds pretty good. So we're going to add another oscillator in though, which is an oscillator 2. I'm going to change it over to a nice triangle wave. And go ahead and put that into filter 2. We're going to put it into filter 1 also. I'm going to add modulation wheel now. And my modulation wheel, I'm going to route about 2/3 of it over to filter 1 frequency also. It makes it so you have a lot more control depending on where you have your modulation wheel. So right there, basically where my original patch was, super, super simple. And I'm going to add just a little more portamento. Maybe even just a little bit more. All right. There you go. That sounds a little better. And a little less decay. Now there's not a lot which we're not getting into, which is all the different kind of oscillators. So let me go through that a little bit. We have the basic analog oscillator, which I was already talking about. We have a wave table oscillator, which you can go through, all sorts of different wave tables. Phase modulation. Again, you can do all sorts of different cool things in here. An FM pair, noise, multi-oscillators. You have a lot of different choice in oscillators. And another cool thing is if you turn it in the back, you can actually use audio input, which means we can take any source and reason and make it an audio input and still put it through all this modulation in Thor. Really, really useful for getting cool effects. Filters now, you don't have just a low pass. You do have a low pass here, but you also have a state variable filter and a whole bunch of other options. The format filter can be really cool. And again, on the right-hand side, you have another filter over here you can put in the very last. So all in all, Thor is a really awesome synthesizer that is really useful in woodwind controllers in Reason. So I suggest you go around and play with it, change your oscillators. Actually, one thing I'm going to show you real fast is if we take our second oscillator and we do tune it, by like 12, we get this. No, which I think is just super cool. So it's just a little bit of detuning of the second oscillator. You know, you can add chorus, you can add delay, you can add a whole bunch of different effects, but you know, that's a very simple thing that it's just really easy to do. And you can even add that onto, you know, a modulation amount like byte sensor or something like that. So Thor is super useful, and I hope that you guys go in and explore a little bit of what else you can do with it. I still think that Europa is my favorite in Reason for woodwind controllers, but Thor is very nice for getting just really basic waveforms out and making it sound super good. So thank you, and I'll see you next time on my next video. I'm not quite sure what I'll be doing, but if you have any requests, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. Thanks.